Hi, how are you?
Oh, fine. What a beautiful night.
Isn't it incredible outside?
Yes, driving the freeway through the rain, those moments of dryness under the bridges.
Ah,
Just like moments of, serenity or peace or oneness in the midst of it coming, doing, being.
what is it about the rain that makes people feel so calm and so together? And do you know?
I don't know, unless it's perhaps a return to our own lost sea, possibly. The closest one can get to the sea and still be on land. But the Zen masters, when looking for places to build temples in the old days of China, always looked for the wet climate, always looked for those mountains which had rain. And because it does do something. It turns your head, it calms you, turns you inside. Perhaps just to get away from the harshness sometimes of the sunlight, which is beautiful too, but then you need the other mood, the yin and the yang.
The yin and the yang. You do a wonderful meditative exercise that I think, if you did tonight, right here at the outset, even before we began talking, would be so restful, so joyous for the audience. I mean, after that, we'd be ready for just anything. And I'm just a little wired, too. And if you do that and I do that, you know the one I'm talking about?
Yes, groovy, fine.
Would you?
Yes. Let me just sort of give it a little background, and we'll move on into it. The background will be part of the meditation, too. The Taoist, that's Taoist, the Taoist of ancient China, they flourished around 3rd century BC. They developed a type of mysticism, a kind of insight into nature, the oneness of nature and themselves, which has had a tremendous influence on down through the centuries, and probably is influencing contemporary America more than any other single tradition. But they just dug themselves as creatures of the universe, and they felt that their own being, their own body and mind, was a microcosmic universe, a reflection of the greater outside universe. And to know oneself was to know the Tao, the ultimate reality of the universe. And so they developed various techniques to explore self and thereby explore the nature of the great Tao. Oftentimes they referred to the Tao, that's T-A-O, they referred to the Tao which was the eternal ground of being, the creative essence, the source. They referred to the Tao as a great clod, C-L-O-D, which gives you the proper balance somehow. It wasn't something, that was held up for worship, but it was called the great clod, and I think that gives you kind of a feeling of the whole Taoist tradition. But anyway, they developed what they called a technique which they called the grand circulation of breath. And it goes something like this. Now, come along. This is all Leela, cosmic play. This is the wind blowing through the pines, the ocean, the surf of the shore, your blood coursing through your blood, your veins. It's all one. It's all the same. First, just allow yourself to take a deep breath and hold it for a moment. And then breathe out, slowly, peacefully, calmly. And then continue your normal breathing. But imagine that bit of deep breath that you took still within your lungs, what the Taoists call the blue grotto of heaven. Now, continue breathing normally, but with your imagination, we will travel with that breath through the grand circulation of the microcosmic orbit of your own body. So, This is really a moving point of concentration. So you are in this blue grotto of heaven, your lungs, with that breath. Now allow it, don't command it, allow it to move slowly down toward the shining palace of the heart. It is moving by the gift of your imagination. Slowly now, don't just jump it there, go with it, down to the shining palace of the heart. Be aware, as Huxley said in The Island, be aware that this breath, as it moves toward the shining palace of the heart, radiates its own kind of serenity and peace and oneness. And then as it reaches the red, shining palace of the heart, go with it, and allow it to continue on down toward what the Taoists call the yellow court, the stomach. Follow it now, slowly, with full awareness, And it brings with it its own sense of serenity and calmness and peace. It is as though you are a pilgrim traveling with this breath. Then as it reaches the yellow court, allow it to continue on down toward what the Taoists call the sea of breath, the abdomen, where the white tiger meets the red bird. Now imagine you are going with it. You are the pilgrim traveling with this breath, this imaginary breath and this grand circulation of breath. And it carries with it its own sense of serenity and peace and oneness. And as it reaches the shore of your sea of breath, it seems to calm the waters of your own being. Linger for a moment at that shore, and then, as a pilgrim, continue to travel with this breath as it moves toward the red court, the kidneys. Go with it now, full awareness, total comprehension. And as it reaches the kidneys, sense the warmth that it brings, the serenity, the oneness. Linger with it for a moment. Be there now. If any thoughts enter your mind, that's groovy. Just be aware of them and allow them to float on out your mind. And allow your awareness to come back to the red court of your own kidneys. And then slowly, this breath and you move on back to the base of the spine, what the Taoists call the tiger gate of the tail. And allow it to linger there for a moment. Again, always being aware of the serenity and the peace that it brings. And then slowly, allow it to ascend the spine. Always to sense the radiance of peace, of oneness, of tranquility, until it reaches the small of the back, what the Taoists call the mystic pivot. And let it linger there for a moment. Let it linger there, radiating its sense of warmth and relaxation throughout that entire area of the small of the back. Be it, you are this breath, you are your own mystic pivot. Then slowly, with full awareness, allow it to continue to ascend the spine. Again, the radiance of serenity and peace and relaxation. Slowly now, until it finally reaches the back of the neck, the Taoists call the jade pillow, and allow it to linger there for a moment. This total sense of oneness and peace and at-one-ment, atonement with the back of your neck. How groovy. And then allow it to go slowly on up into the head, what the Taoists call the jade pool in the heavenly court, and allow it to linger there, bringing with it again the sense of serenity and oneness, peace. And then slowly allow it to move to the front of the head, to what we sometimes call the third eye, the space between the eyes, what the Taoists called the Hall of Light. And allow it to linger there and spring its radiance of peace and serenity throughout the entire forehead, and then allow it to escape through the nostrils, joining again the great breath of the universe. And such a microcosmic orbit of you is but the reflection of the total oneness and harmony of the universe. Sensory overload is just as an authentic experience, a way of going as sensory deprivation, as confining yourself to a cave. And but anyway, the shamans would use various techniques, and they developed a technique. They developed the use of the mushroom as another means of helping them transcend self-consciousness, transcend self. And then, of course, depending upon the culture, there were always some plants which would allow you to do this. So, I think the thing that happened here in the scene today, though, is first the paranoia that developed with the whole drug scene, so that it became oftentimes just bad vibes itself, just to undergo that trip. Plus, then the black market because of suppression, and the use of the mixture with speed. And sometimes strychnine for the flash at the beginning, and all the other things that went down, so that it was no longer a beautiful trip. It was no longer, there's nothing you could do with it really, except for the few individuals, possibly. But to say, is it a false mysticism, false front for mysticism? No, I can't honestly say that. I can say that there was an authentic experiences for some individuals. Then when it became the thing to do, when it became popular, why, then of course, yes, then there were some frightening things that happened. But again, all that I, as a mystic, can do is to say that I'm a pragmatist, and I go by the characteristics of the experience itself. And whatever your belief or overbelief or your judgment is, well, then that's where your head is, and that's groovy too.
It's one of the things that's always fascinated me about you, Jack, in the years that we've known each other, in the conversations we've had. You have never ever told me to believe anything. You have never told me that this is the way, this is the best trip. I've never heard you knock a trip or put down a faith or put down a religion. Yet you approach so much of this stuff almost on a scientific level. I mean, there is that warm objectivity, and it's not the aggressiveness of detachment and analysis. It's kind of a participatory objectiveness. Where does that thin line end between that and, as Hoffer would say, the true believer, and losing all semblance of objectivity, plunging yourself into only one faith trip, believing that that's the way, and closing the doors of perception to all else?
Well, I'm afraid I wouldn't even condemn the true believer, because, this, for the moment, he is concentrating all of his energies, mental, physical energies, upon a breakthrough, upon discovering a new dimension of himself. So naturally, he feels that anything else is simply irrelevant. It simply isn't where it's at, because this is where he's at the moment. This is the center of the universe for him, and that's fine. That's where he's at, and he will either go beyond that, or he won't go beyond it, and that's groovy too. The Zen expression: some blossoming branches grow long, and some grow short.
Are there any bad trips? Are there any bad faith trips? Are there any faith trips that one should not try to embark upon?
Well, I think there are experiences which will restrict your consciousness. I think there are dogma trips that will restrict your consciousness, and that can be a learning process for you. Just think of the number of students, for example, who come to college with whatever their particular, perhaps fundamentalist faith trip happens to be. Perhaps they were in a very narrow perspective or gestalt and saw the universe only as possibly in terms of the creator and the created.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The typical Western faith trip. But out of that, their minds expanded. And of course, you can take the creator and the created trip, the usual, Christian Judaic trip of a God who created, and think of all the great mystics, both of the Jewish faith and the Christian faith, who went beyond the symbolism to experience the oneness. That's why I say to use a judgmental awareness is really, in a sense, to restrict your own gestalt perspective.
Let's take a brief break, get some commercials out of the way, and then I'd like us to start talking about biofeedback and the Biomeditation Society. And my head is ready. Jack Gariss with you till midnight. All right. With all of that as a preface, with all of that as an introduction, I know that this has become the love of your life, and it's going to be so difficult probably for you to condense so much of your knowledge and involvement in this subject to this question that I'd like you to address yourself to. What is biofeedback? What is the Biomeditation Society? What is all of this that you have involved yourself in? Give us a little background or however you wish to express it. What are we about to do?
Well, we best express by just very, very briefly a thumbnail sketch of what happened, how it came about.
Okay.
What is it? I think there are probably two sources. One was that it was as recent as 1928, a German psychiatrist by the name of Berger discovered that the brain had certain wave patterns. And there were 4 major brainwave patterns that could be distinguished. The first was delta, and that's D-E-L-T-A, 3.5 cycles per second, and characteristic of deep sleep, characteristic of the first year of a child's life, and also characteristic of death. Which is sort of interesting.
Yes, it is.
Sleep, birth, death. And it is a very large wave, brain wave, and you can sort of think of them as waves in the ocean. And then the second is theta, T-H-E-T-A, which is from around 3.5 cycles to 8 cycles. And theta, well, theta in an adult is characteristic of daydreaming, wish projection, sometimes uncertainty. But it ordinarily appears in a child, the dominant brainwave pattern in a child, from 2 to 5. And it's very interesting because from 2 to 5, this is when the child is beginning to experience the world. And in this case, it seems to be characteristic of that wonder and awe of first-time experiencing, when everything is a miracle and everything is seen and touched and tasted for the first time. Then, at 5, the alpha wave appears. Now, the alpha is from 8 to 13 cycles per second. 8 to 13 waves per second, if you're thinking of in terms of waves coming into the beach.
When you say cycles per second or waves, what is a brain wave?
Well, it is a electrical, electrical pulsation. It is like a wave. It's like a signal from here, from the station. And it is it has a characteristic pattern. For example, the alpha wave, when it is recorded on recording paper through an EEG, electroencephalograph, it has a definite pattern and shape, and you can recognize it. In fact, every individual has his own almost distinctive alpha brainwave pattern.
Are they like original with each person as a fingerprint, Mike?
Yes, absolutely.
Huh.
But the alpha, from 8 to 13 cycles per second, seems to be characteristic of serenity, at one with self. It ordinarily appears in just that magical moment before going to sleep, the hypnagogic stage, when the day has been, just right, and the vibes have been good, and there you are, you're just not yet going into the spindles of sleep, but just there with it, totally with yourself. Then you produce a lot of alpha. Then the other, incidentally, alpha appears in a child at 5 years, and coexists with theta, then finally becomes dominant in the child for a while, and then disappears after 10, until it appears only sporadically, when those moments of the day come when, yes, it's beautiful. That moment of beauty, that moment of, and we all have them. If you really were registering your brain waves, then it would be alpha. And then finally the last pattern is beta, which goes from ordinary beta from 13 to 28 cycles per second, but it goes on up. And it is a sign of anxiety, tension, bad vibes. And of course, the faster it goes, the higher it goes, why then it can get into various psychotic states.
So what you're saying in essence is, as we move through the course of our day, as we experience these different feelings, these waves in our brain react differently.
Yes. Although most of the time in our everyday consciousness, we usually just carry around a random low voltage, mixed frequency brainwave pattern to handle the everyday things. Occasionally you may see some alpha, occasionally you may daydream, and occasionally you may get uptight and have some beta. But ordinarily it's just this kind of mixture, undistinguished mixture, low voltage, random frequencies. But, they were, when these waves were discovered, they were very excited, because they felt that here the secrets of the brain could be could be revealed. It didn't work out that way.
By the way, excuse me, when was that? When were the discovery of these waves?
1928.
Right.
As I say, by a man by the name of Berger. Actually, before then, in the Franco-Prussian War, they had discovered that the brain did put out a certain amount of electrical energy, but they didn't find any particular patterns. But they found that there was really no correlation between one's personality and brainwave patterns. There simply wasn't any correlation, and they worked on this for years. And so the field really became, the brainwave patterns really became a sort of a very limited field for brain disorders. You could tell when a person had tumors and so on and so forth. And this is practically all, in other words, a very specialized medical interest in brainwaves after that. Then, fascinating experimenting began in Japan. A Japanese psychiatrist by the name of Kasamatsu, a psychologist by the name of Hirai, they began testing some Zen masters in meditation. And they were interested in the overall pattern. What happens to an individual in meditation? What changes, if any, come about? Not only brainwave patterns, but what happens to blood pressure? What happens to heart? What happens to the galvanic skin response? What happens to, in other words, is there a change? And they found yes.
When the masters went into a state of meditation.
And indeed, when the students went into meditation, and the more advanced they were, the more proficient they became in meditation, the more the changes came about.
What kind of changes?
Well, one was the brainwave pattern change. In sitting down to meditate, now this is a master or a trained student, for a 30-minute meditation, they would start with this random low-voltage mixed-frequency brainwave pattern. And then about 2 minutes after they sat down to meditate, alpha rhythm began to appear. At first, around 20 or 30 microvolts. In other words, the height of the amplitude was 20 or 30 microvolts.
Right.
And about 12 cycles per second or waves per second. But as they sat and meditated, changes began to occur within the alpha itself. The alpha began to increase in amplitude. In other words, it went from 20 or 30 microvolts on up to 40, 60, 70, 90 microvolts.
The more they were involved in meditation, progressively...
The more they were involved, and this would all happen within a 30-minute period.
Huh, incredible.
And then toward the end of this 30-minute period, not only did they build their amplitude up, sometimes depending upon the meditator and his own proficiency, from 70 to 100 microvolts. Hey, dig it. You start at 20 microvolts. In a period of 30 minutes, you have increased your amplitude 5 times. You know some head changes are going on, you know? So, but toward the end of the meditation then, not only did the amplitude increase, but the waves began to slow down. In other words, if they were starting at 11 cycles per second, they began to go down to 10, and 9, and 8, and 7, until they even went below what alpha would be, and you actually had a theta pattern waves, except that it had an alpha formation. It was an alpha, so you had this kind of blending of theta and alpha. And really, what was it? Well, in a sense, it was like a restoration of the child's theta consciousness. Like that restoration of the wonder and the awe and the first time experiencing. And actually, when they tested the Zen meditators to their reaction to stimuli, that they found out this is what happened. Because, you see, ordinarily, you hear a sound, and it startles you. You pay attention to it. But you repeat that sound constantly, and pretty soon you are habituated to the sound, and you no longer hear it.
You no longer react to it.
No longer react to it. You are conditioned to that stimulus. But what they discovered was that Zen masters in meditation, while in this state of high amplitude and slowed down frequency, if they rang a bell every second, they would respond to it, or say every 7 seconds, they would respond to it, be aware of what it was, and go right back into alpha. And no matter how many times they rang that bell, 10, 20, 30 times, each time as though it was a first-time experience. So, you see, when the mystic said, like, for example, the Christian mystic said, you must be as a child to enter the kingdom of heaven, and the kingdom of heaven being within your heart, he was speaking a very basic truth. Or when the Taoist said that a sage must grandfather it, he must become again as his grandchild. He must grandchild it. He must become again as his grandchild to experience. They were talking about some very basic truths as modern science has revealed it. But anyway, now, in India, a doctor by the name of Amand with the hospital, All Indian Congress Hospital, was also doing some tests with Indian yogis in samadhi.
Mm-hmm.
And what he discovered was that they developed the same kind of brainwave pattern as the Zen masters in meditation. Increased alpha amplitude, slowed down frequency.
That was the common denominator.
That was the common denominator.
I see.
And dig this for a moment. Here was the Indian yogi in samadhi, which meant that he was in trance. His trip was entirely different from the Zen.
Right, right.
The Zen who meditated with the eyes open. The Zen who was saying that the Buddha mind is the ordinary mind. Nirvana is samsara, everyday reality.
Mm-hmm.
And the Indian who said that all is illusion. And yet they ended up the same place. One in a trance and wasn't aware at all of the universe around him. The other totally aware, saying that every moment was nirvana. And yet they both had the same brainwave pattern. This is why I say, you can't judge, you see, a person's trip.
That's a wonderful spot for us to take a brief break. We'll be right back.